The Minnesota Vikings are on the verge of something huge, as a recent report has revealed the Vikings' draft plan heading into this year's NFL draft, drafting a quarterback later in this draft in Ohio State's Will Howard. We're going to be breaking down this report, going over what this means for the Minnesota Vikings, as well as what this means for JJ McCarthy in specific here. But before we get into all of this news here, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the sub button, join me and Griffen here on the channel. We notice that 91% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot for all of your Minnesota Vikings news, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button, join us here on the channel. We're covering everything Minnesota Vikings, but we need to get in this report because things are not really making a whole lot of sense when it does come down to this draft. We have a rookie quarterback coming in this year in JJ McCarthy, someone who has yet to play a regular season NFL game. The Vikings are already linked to another quarterback with star potential in this year's draft in Will Howard, national champion from Ohio State. And let's get into this report here. Starting off on Wednesday, ESPN NFL writer Ben Solak wrote an article looking at 12 rookie quarterback best fits in the upcoming draft. Solak has the Vikings selecting Ohio State quarterback Will Howard in the 6th round of the NFL draft. Now, when we look at the NFL draft, the available picks the Vikings have, the available quarterbacks, things line up in this available range. The pick the Vikings have, the pick that Will Howard is likely to go towards. However, this is an NFL draft that we really don't know where things and places and teams and where everybody's going to be selected. We have a pretty good idea in the first round of some teams of players who are going to be linked there, but if Will Howard will be a day 2, day 3 draft player, he's going to be kind of in the middle of everything. We still have not yet a certain spot, but it does seem like he will be a day 2 player at the end of the day, according to all reports. Now, when we're looking at the Vikings, when we're looking at another quarterback option, when we're looking at all of the systems that we've mentioned for a backup quarterback, what the Vikings' options are, free agency, now with Aaron Rodgers out of the picture, I mentioned a few videos ago that the draft is a certain possibility. Now, was it likely? I really didn't have any idea at that point because there was no reports, because we haven't seen anything, and also because we don't have yet a veteran quarterback in the organization under contract. And that's where things kind of get into a little bit of a mix for the Minnesota Vikings, because when we look at Will Howard's stats, he's a very solid player this year, and especially with Ohio State, the rest of the years with the Kansas State Wildcats. Looking at his stats this year, he has starter potential. 73 completion percentage, 4,000 yards, just over, 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 175 passer rating. And with Will Howard, we saw what he could do when he gets put on a team with elite talent. And Ohio State at that was a big part of it. We saw that they were a great team. Obviously, coming out to win the national championship was a big part of that, and going to show that this team was built to win. It's very, very similar when you're looking at it to the Minnesota Vikings system right now, where we see the Vikings come out, have a star-studded team, giving JJ McCarthy the option to go out here and really work with that. But having a guy like Will Howard, a backup who has proved to be able to command a dual-threat wide receiver system, similar to what the Vikings have now in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, similar to what Ohio State had this year. And it's a very interesting option when we're looking at him. And we will get into his NFL comparisons in a bit here, but I wanted to pull up the quotes here from Ben Solak about what this whole idea was for the Minnesota Vikings. Starts off here with saying something pretty interesting, actually. He says, ideally, the Vikings go quarterback earlier in this draft, but Howard is in round 6 is pretty square deal. He had 43 starts over 4 seasons at Kansas State and a national championship campaign with Ohio State. With the Buckeyes, he looked as a part of a poised and trustworthy veteran. Like Howard's mobility, he isn't a one read and scramble escape artist in the pocket. He'll sit in there, bounce through progressions, and look for the correct throw. He can break a tackle or two as well. He's big and doesn't shy away from contact. And right here, Ben Solak has him listed as round 6. Now, I've seen from round 6 here, Ben Solak actually being the lowest in his projections, all the way up to the 3rd round, where I believe he was 80th overall, I want to say, from a CBS report. So there are multiple opportunities here for him across the board, giving him options to be able to go up and down in any team, really, and also multiple teams and rounds. So it is something to really take a look at as we progress further towards the draft, when teams are looking at quarterbacks, when teams are looking at later picks, and of course, there's still movement going to be going around for quite some time now until the draft, when you see these late round pick trades and whatnot, and especially on draft day, we see a lot of movement there. So we saw the Vikings trade up for JJ McCarthy. Could be the same here in a much lesser extent when it does come down to a 3 through 6th round. Now, he also continues on and going to say this. Howard can access all the levels of the field and is generally safe with the football, but he doesn't see it fast and will get hoodwinked by coverage rotations at the snap. He needs an offense like the one that Kevin O'Connell runs, as it protects the quarterback from high processing demands. At Ohio State, Howard picked his poison on isolation routes with elite college receivers in Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. I believe that's correct. If that's wrong, I do apologize. In Minnesota, he could do the same with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So once again, Ben Solak pointing out the point that it's a very similar team and even better than the Ohio State Buckeyes, kind of built for him in this lineup. And once again, we saw what he could do under a great team, a much better team than Kansas State in Ohio. In Ohio State, receiving core was very good. He was great there. Obviously, had some good system around him, good running backs and everything, and even putting him in the Minnesota Vikings system, organizing that into the way any quarterback could really find friendly, and especially the way that we built it for JJ McCarthy, gives the Vikings quite a major option to be able to kind of pick him out of the group of quarterbacks. And when we're looking at that as well, I wanted to pull up this before we kind of get into the rest of these quarterbacks, going over the size of these guys and everything. But John Gruden says that Ohio State quarterback Will Howard is like a young Josh Allen. Now, to a much lesser extent to this point, but when we're looking at his size, when we're looking at him compared to the rest of the quarterbacks here in this draft, you look at Will Howard here at 123. That is his ranking overall in the draft. So around a 4th round pick in that sense, if you're going by that. 6'4", 236. He is, I don't want to say by far, but significantly bigger than the majority of the quarterbacks listed here. And coming out of a lot of these different options, Ohio State certainly is one that, is easier for a quarterback, but when you're given a scenario and like him, being able to go to this team for 1 year, win a national championship, come out here and be a much better quarterback in the rankings than what you were before, it gives him a great opportunity to be able to show his skill set at the NFL level. And 6'4", 236, a guy that can move, a guy that can sling the ball, a guy like Josh Allen in build, and a guy who plays like Josh Allen don't come very often. And I think that's a big part of the Minnesota Vikings kind of thought process behind what is going to be coming here out of this draft. And a quarterback seems like an interesting decision, but it also makes sense when we're looking at it. And the Vikings' current draft picks here now is where things kind of get a little bit ropey for the Vikings. And they have the 1st overall pick. We know that. A first round pick, not the 1st overall. A 3rd round pick at 97, a 5th round pick at 139, and a 6th round pick at 187. And I think that, as I mentioned, there could be really any spot in this draft that Will Howard would go. We see him up as high as the 3rd. We see him as low as the 6th from Ben Solak there. And the Vikings do have the picks to be able to utilize that, but me and Griffen here have mentioned that the Vikings need to go after the holes that they have already before they can go and tackle something that they want to get. We know that there's another corner possibility, and I think that could be an option with the 1st round pick, a corner or safety, anybody really in the secondary. We also have an offensive line, a guard that could be made maybe in that 3rd round pick. Maybe they move up to a 2nd round pick. I think there's options there for the Vikings, but given Will Howard here in a 5th or a 6th or maybe a 4th or wherever happens via trade at the deadline, at the draft, there's an option here for the Vikings to be able to get Ben Solak. Now, we also have the list of quarterbacks that are free agents for the Vikings, and there's been a few that we've mentioned, Joe Flacco being one who's a veteran. That still is in the cards. You're not going to go out here, draft a quarterback, get 2 rookie quarterbacks on your team and have it as that. You're going to be signing a veteran quarterback at any point here. Joe Flacco, still in the system, would even be a better type of player to be able to go with another Will Howard, with a JJ McCarthy. Teach both of them. Give the Vikings options. But JJ McCarthy obviously is this guy. He's going to be the guy next, and that's no question. But having a backup who can have a lot of potential and a veteran one really just seems to fit the Vikings' ideas as of right now. Now, I wanted to also pull this up from Stacey Dales. Looking at the Vikings, looking at Ohio State's Pro Day, the Vikings had no representatives there from the coaching staff, from a GM standpoint. There could have been some scouts there, but at this right now, the coaches, GMs, there were none. So that's very interesting as well to look at how this team, the Vikings at least, are going over their processes. It may not be there for the Pro Day, but they definitely have eyes on him. And I wanted to pull this up just to kind of show that, maybe March, what was this? This was from March 26th. They had their eyes on Aaron Rodgers, but at this point now they don't. So it makes sense why they probably didn't have eyes all there, but we got to think, they're not missing out on any scouts. They're not missing out on anything like this. They're going to be there. They're going to be ready, and they're going to be seeing what they want at what point in the draft. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you want to see Will Howard as a Minnesota Viking? I think there's options here. Free agency, of course, is still a thing. Looking at the draft, there's still quite a few quarterback options, as I mentioned, but Will Howard is a very interesting one when it does come down to it. JJ McCarthy, not the biggest guy, and having Will Howard as the biggest guy in this draft, something certainly could be looking good here for the Vikings. So let me know what you think in the comments below, but that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well, and remember, we got a lot of Minnesota Vikings content coming. You will not want to miss it, but that's all we got. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.